Very quickly again, I have 90 seconds and Manuel has 90. I'm just going to start by saying thank you to everybody for coming today and giving up an awful lot of your time. Thank you to Nina and Pat and colleagues at the EBI for organising this event. It's my job to talk a little bit about why it's needed. My background's in philosophy. I'm tempted to just say why not and walk off. I'll resist that urge. I think why we need it is what I'm seeing, certainly around health. There's an awful lot going on around AI and health, some of it specifically and some of it indirectly, but there's an awful lot of work potentially that can go on in silos. What we really want to do is use this kind of event to pull everybody together, to take a peek into those silos and just start to have those conversations, because that's where we can generate ideas. So this is about understanding what people are doing around AI and health, particularly in relation to ethics and governance and socio-digital transformation, and try to bring it together because there's strength in collaboration, there's strength in interdisciplinarity, and there's strength in numbers. So my parting shot is just going to be to remind everybody that as an ethicist, I often get told that my job is to kind of stand in the way and stop progress. I want to make very, very clear, ethics is about enabling, not just stopping. It is and ought to be a critical friend of science and technology. There's ethical reasons to do things, there's also ethical reasons to stop sometimes, but we only know which is which when we have these conversations. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Manuel.
So I will just say a few things about the what that we're going to cover today. And we want to explore three key aspects of AI in health. So first of all, we are going to look at how AI tools are transforming healthcare systems, how they affect existing infrastructure, how those effects differ across the digital divide, and what are the consequences for patient empowerment. And I mean, these socio-digital transformations are happening as we speak, so we kind of, let's say, want to understand their dynamics. And the second, we focus on ethics. And AI in health raise traditional issues like bias, fairness, and privacy, but also new issues, new challenges, especially cutting-edge generative AI tools, how they might impact therapeutic relationship between patients and healthcare providers. And finally, we are also interested in governance. So there is a pressing need for regulatory frameworks that promote transparency, explainability, and clear standard for accountability and safety in AI systems. So these are the three key things that we would like to discuss today, but of course we are open to anything. So, and let me now introduce you the first speaker of our event, Caroline Green, Director of Research from the Institute for Ethics in AI at Oxford University. Thank you.
Everyone, my name is Caroline Green. Thanks so much for the introduction, and I've been given 10 minutes.
Really sorry for
so
you into the square so we can catch you.
Here we go. Yeah, so which is great. This square, I usually walk around, so I'll try and stay here. Yeah, so I'm the Director of Research of the Institute for Ethics in AI at the University of Oxford, and I've been given a few more minutes because I've also been invited to speak a little bit about the Institute and what we do before I introduce you to some of the work that I do on adult social care rather than healthcare provision and AI. So the Institute for Ethics in AI was launched in 2021, so we're still quite new, but we're part of the Faculty of Philosophy at the University of Oxford. But we're very much an interdisciplinary team, so even though we are led by a philosopher, Professor John Tessoulas, we have got a team of researchers working on AI and law and governance. I myself have a background in human rights law and gerontology and have been working in social care for a long time. We've got philosophers, of course, social sciences and so on. And what we want to do is we want to, first of all, obviously also leverage the benefits of AI, but we are very critically looking at all the different types of ethical issues when it comes to AI across many sectors. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction as well on how we work. So we've got several initiatives within the Institute. So I'm leading on a very new program which is called the Accelerator Fellowship Program. And what that is all about is to respond to these really pressing ethical AI issues in the world at speed and at pace, because we're moving so fast that we also need to bring people from different sectors, from different disciplines together to find innovative solutions and ways forward. And here we're reaching out to not just other academics, but we're very broadly working with policy, with civil society, and so on. And this fellowship program is not just a fellowship program. We've got 3 pillars. So the first pillar is what we call activities and strategic projects. So here, for example, currently we're working on AI and creativity and what AI does to the livelihoods of the creative industries and how we can work with IP and so on. And we're going to have a new project around that. And AI and care is within our strategic activities as well. Then our fellowship program sees some movers and shakers in AI come to Oxford and work with us. So here you see, for example, Cass Sunstein, who's a famous lawyer from the US, Alondra Nelson, who wrote the AI Bill of Human Rights, Yuval Shani, who's a human rights lawyer now looking at digital human rights and whether we need a new convention on AI rights, and Joy Bulawini, who was one of the first people who found racial bias in AI systems. So we're very lucky to host these people and to work with them over the next few years. And our third pillar is all about collaborations. So I'm hoping that maybe we'll find a way to collaborate with the university. Another initiative that's housed at our institute is called the Human-Centered AI Lab, which is led by my colleague, Professor Philip Corrales, who's a philosopher. And it's all about translating philosophy into code. So it's very much about, seeing how can we translate values and actually build AI systems in a way that they align. And so that's very technical, but also bringing the philosophical element in as well. So I've given you a little bit of an overview now of our institute. I'm now going to jump into my research focus. So as Director of Research, I work on a very administrative level, but I've also got my own research. And this is very much about AI and caregiving. So when I talk about social care, it's about broadly, often people talk about the support, the emotional and practical support with activities of daily living of people who are disabled or have needs, chronic illness, and so on. And we're seeing very much that generative AI, but also other AI, but so ChatGPTs and so on, are being used in care homes, in care services, in people's homes. And obviously, these have potential benefits. Anyone who's used them here knows that administrative tasks can be taken over easily by ChatGPT and the like. So what we're seeing is that, for example, care workers have started using ChatGPT to generate care plans. Now, this is great for them, but there are very many technical limitations to generative AI that people aren't aware of, and that could be harmful to people's privacy rights, to person-centered care, and to what I call the fundamental values of care. What we have found is that currently there's no official guidelines by the Care Quality Commission, the Department of Health and Social Care, or so on how to use generative AI and other types of AI responsibly in adult social care. So around a year ago, February last year, we hosted a roundtable at Oxford where we invited various leaders from adult social care to come and discuss with us this issue and how generative AI is being used, how they feel about it, what's needed. And together we set up a statement called the Oxford Statement on the responsible use of generative AI in social care. And we said we as a sector need to come together, drawing on people who draw on care and support, on caregivers, care workers, and so on. We all need to come together in cross-sector collaboration to understand better what the responsible use of AI in adult social care really means. So what do we need in order to make sure that we leverage the benefits, but that we also know the harms and can mitigate them? So this cross-sector collaboration was co-hosted by myself, as well as the Digital Care Hub, which is a charity, and Daniel Casson Consulting, who's somebody who knows the care sector very well. And we brought together over 100 different people and organizations, and very much at the heart of it is also Think Local, Act Personal, who then started with us a co-production around AI in care. And we came together, we organized ourselves in a steering group of people. We met once a month and then various working groups where people who draw on care and support, professional care workers and so on, came together in their little groups to make sense of AI, to understand what it is, to understand how they're using it and how it's impacting them. And then on a second level, we came together in a co-production where we put everything that we had done within the working groups, and those were different outputs, like a statement, a care worker statement of demands, or a care provider's guidance. We put it all on the table and we discussed together, well, what is it actually, what responsible AI now means? What have we learned? So in March this year, we had the AI and Social Care Summit. We hosted it in Oxford. That was a 2-day event, and the first day was all about, again, co-producing and deliberating. So 60 of us who were part of the cross-sector collaboration came together again in person. We discussed some really knotty issues here. Yeah. First of all, also how can we now agree of what responsible AI and adult social care means? But we also discussed some knotty issues. And we found that AI is so much more than just a technology. AI is now existing within our social structures, within power dynamics, right? It's just something that's coming in there now. And what this process has shown us, what it has done to us, is that we had to step back. We had to reflect what does social care actually mean to people's lives? What is it that we want to protect? What is it that we value? And what are some of the issues that exist apart from AI? And so one of the knotty issues, for example, was around co-production and the relationship between tech developers and people who draw on care and support and care workers. How are we going to make sure that this technology actually interacts with people who draw on care and support, understands them, builds them into the AI lifecycle in a meaningful way? So co-production for tech development. And this is very difficult because tech developers are existing in their reality in their business realities. They need to make money, they need to protect their IP and so on. And at the moment, they don't feel that co-production works with that. So that's one of the tensions that we saw. But we also agreed that what we really want to do, what responsible use of AI in social care means, is that the use of AI systems in the care or related to the care of people supports and does not undermine, harm, or unfairly breach fundamental values of care, human rights, independence, choice and control, dignity, equality, and well-being. So what we put here at the heart was the human, the interests of the human rights and well-being of people who draw on care and support, and also care workers. And often when we see or hear about what AI can do for adult social care, we get these outcome-driven narratives saying, oh, it's going to help us be more efficient, more effective, and that might then mean that we can free up time to give more care to people, right? But who is it who actually draws up these narratives? At the moment, it's often policymakers, it's often tech developers. If we step back and take this as the starting point and then define our outcomes, it's going to be much more powerful, and that's what we want to see in the future. So thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this day and hearing about your work and what you're doing, and we are continuing this work with a new alliance in AI and social care, and I hope that we can work together in it in one way or another. Thank you.
So just say thank you very much to Caroline, and I will now hand you over to Emmanuel again. Happy to move on slides.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So what's
Just okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you very much. I'm Emanuele Ratti. I'm working in the Department of Philosophy here in Bristol, and I work especially in philosophy of science and technology and AI ethics, especially in the medical context. And in order to explain you what I'm interested in medical AI ethics, let me just draw you like a very quick picture of how I see AI ethics as a discipline. Okay, so I think that there are 3 kinds of AI ethics in healthcare, and the first one is an approach that takes a number of societal and normative desiderata of political and ethical nature, and then provide an evaluation of AI systems from the point of view of those normative commitments. And I mean, debate on explainability, trustworthiness, and transparency and safety are an example of this. Second, conceptualize AI ethics more as a technical and engineering discipline, where you have ethical concepts that are formalized and implemented as technical and design requirements of AI system, like the debate on fairness in machine learning, and ethics is literally inside the AI systems. And while I think that these two approaches have provided valuable works to which I have also contributed to, I'm often dissatisfied by the way they are thinking about AI systems as detached and in isolation from the context in which they are supposed to be implemented. So that's why I'm interested in the third approach, which I define in this way. So it's the study of how AI systems in health are adapted or maladapted to the context in which they are used, how the context of implementation react to maladapted tools, and the ethical pitfall of this. And I call this interactional AI ethics exactly because the locus of ethical analysis become the interaction between the AI system and the context of implementation. And so the characteristic of the context and the characteristic of the users populating that particular context become essential here. And in order to show you why this is important, let me just, let's say, consider this widely discussed case a few years ago, but from a slightly different perspective, okay? So in this paper here, Obermeyer and colleague, they found that a widely used health risk assessment algorithmic tool was performing particularly bad on black patients, and in particular it was super bad at flagging a black patient with high risk. And I mean, among the many problems that the system had, what they found was that the algorithm was using health expenditure as a proxy for health risk, which in principle makes sense because, I mean, the more you spend on health, the more it's very likely that you have some sort of, let's say, health-related problem. However, it's going to work only for a specific kind of end users with specific characteristics, like having a full-time job, having an insurance, living in a context that is conducive of health expenditure, like where you have access to healthcare, and we know how it's very important in the UK. And so what happened was that the AI practitioner were assuming that the context where the system was supposed to be implemented was populated by end users with very specific characteristics in an environment with specific features conducive of health expenditure. The moment in which you move to an environment with different end users, then it caused harm and exclusion. And the broader lesson is that the characteristic of the context of implementation and the characteristic of the users populating this context matters a lot. And this is not just for AI, like for any simple technology even. So consider bicycles, okay? So these are technical artifacts that can provide great benefits to users. So they can facilitate physical exercise, they can expand social networks, and all of that. However, these benefits will materialize only if the users have certain characteristics and if the environment is, for instance, conducive or facilitating the movement of bicycles. So if you live in the Netherlands, bicycles are great. If you live in the Amazon forest, then they might not be that good, or at least you need a different kind of bike. So the broader lesson is that, that implementing an AI system without carefully considering end users' profile and context of implementation have unpredictable ethical consequences. And in this context of interactional AI ethics, I study how I'm particularly interested in the practices of responsible transfer of AI tools across different healthcare systems. So AI tools, their design and function are usually imprinted with the priorities, values, and assumption of their context of origin, and they are optimized for specific socio-technical systems. And usually transplanting digital technology, they don't work as well, and they have these very unpredictable ethical consequences. So with my collaborators from Oxford and Leiden, we are studying how these work, how these dynamics of transfer work between high-income countries versus low and middle-income countries. And these challenges scarcely been addressed in AI ethics so far, but it has like important consequences for global equity and access to the benefit of medical AI. Thank you.
Thank you to Emmanuel. Feel free to ask him questions during the lunch break. No, during the lunch break, not now. And over to Jonathan. I'm going to hover here now, rather than going up and down.
Right. So I'm going to talk very briefly about end users and AI, specifically focusing on some of what I've been looking at in terms of trust and liability in clinical practice and research. Thank you. I'm not going to be making an argument, but really just giving you an overview of some of the stuff I've been doing, and I stress with lots of other people. I've not done any of this by myself, in the hope that some of you might be interested in it and want to have a chat about it later. So very, very quick intro. I'm Professor of Empirical Bioethics and also Head of Population Health Sciences. So I'm kind of here in my medical school capacity as well. As a school, we're doing lots of work around AI and health across research and education. We're very, very keen to collaborate across schools and faculties. And I think we've got the same aim. So again, if anyone would like to just have a conversation about those collaborative opportunities, you'll hear from lots of my colleagues today as well, but please do just grab me over lunch. So I've already said that. So where I'm coming from, I initially trained in philosophy, then bioethics and medical ethics with a focus on methodology, really. And I only really became interested in AI in passing. I wasn't really interested in it. And then a PhD student came into my office with a nice idea about looking at responsibility and liability in clinical spaces. And it's expanded into collaborative work with colleagues in engineering, looking at trust and ethics in autonomous systems. And it's kind of spiraled from there. It's kind of the thing that I feel like I'm being sucked into, whether I like it or not. But fortunately, it is quite interesting. So I guess where I'm coming from, it's important because I don't think AI necessarily raises huge new problems for medical ethics that requires completely new tools and theories. I like what Emmanuel said, though, notwithstanding. So I think it certainly provides a new context in which long-standing debates are rehearsed, and it creates interesting and challenging new problems. But I don't think it demands the reinvention of medical ethics per se. So what I've done and what I'm doing with many others, well, I've kind of tried to categorize the work I've done and am doing. Some work around liability with Helen Smith. I thought she was in the room. I can't say. Oh, yeah, there she is. Looking at artificial intelligence in clinical decision-making and thinking about personal responsibility and liability. So when an AI is put into that clinical space, normally because it can do something that the human brain cannot, under what circumstances can a clinician as an end user ignore it when it thinks it's wrong? Or can it kind of do what it says even though it doesn't really understand what's going on? It puts the clinician, it kind of frames them as what Alicia's described as a moral crumple zone, where they're absorbing that responsibility and liability. I think we've done a lot of work on the engineering. We've done less work on how end users are actually going to feel about it. Language. I think language is increasingly important. The way we talk about AI really shapes the way people understand and conceptualize it and frames their relationships with it. So we've looked about the way we use language to talk about it. That's really relevant with trust. I'm starting to think we shouldn't be talking about trust as a relationship with technology. So I've done a lot of work about whether we should actually be talking about trust in technology or whether we're more appropriately talking about trust in the systems and the people around it. Is trust an opposite relationship or an opposite way to describe our relationship with technology? But again, that links very much to the use of language. With Matimba Swana, who's also in the room, and Sabine Howitz, we're looking at how we actually utilize some of these technologies, particularly this, looking at using swarm robots to treat cancer. Again, thinking downstream, this technology is not ready yet. When it is, how can we actually use this for the first time in humans? Who wants to be the person to be injected with nanorobots for the first time? I use this as an example when I'm engaging with school children about ethics and medicine. There's always a couple of 13-year-olds who put their hands up and desperately want to be the first people to be injected with tiny robots. I don't know if anyone's keen here. No, I won't do the same. And then that all leads to thinking about governance and guidance as well. So again, this is linking all the way back to the first point about liability. If there is this liability problem, how can we design and develop guidance that actually works for end users? And we should be co-creating that. So what I'm thinking about going forwards, how should human-like AI be deployed and regulated, with Colin particularly, and thinking about synthetic subjects in research and as qualitative research participants, preparing the clinical workforce, how can we actually train the clinical workforce to work with AI, and I would like to think more about language and trust and whether kind of mischaracterization where the language of trust mischaracterizes and leads to misunderstandings about the appropriate relationship. I was going to explain that quote. It looks massively inappropriate. It's not. It's about using language to make somebody trust, even though that language might be inappropriate. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you to Jonathan. We'll hand over to Nirav now. Just okay to move forward.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Nirav Ajmeri. I'm in the School of Computer Science and I'm a lecturer in AI. My interests are in multi-agent systems and intelligent agents, and I'm thinking it from a socio-technical standpoint wherein agents or multi-agent systems can help humans make better decisions. I want to talk about bits about how I understand ethics. And when I'm thinking about ethics, I'm thinking about right and wrong, what is right, what is wrong, and we're thinking about ethics as a field of ethics. We're thinking about systemizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong. If you think it from classical ethics standpoint, we start thinking about ethos, oikos, and polis. The idea is that ethos talking about good behavior by oneself, oikos talking about good behavior in household, and then carrying on that good behavior in a society. That is my understanding of ethics, and that is where I am starting. Starting from good behavior, often we are thinking about dilemmas, and often when we start thinking about ethics, we start thinking about ethical dilemmas. I have some examples here, but in general, it could be a bed allocation. For instance, who gets a bed, or it could be who gets the vaccine, or where should the ambulance go. So these are the type of resource allocation problems that happen. There could be, say, somebody has a contagious disease. Now, should that be disclosed by the physician? If you disclose, you are not preserving privacy of that patient. But if you do not disclose, the society could be at risk. So then there is a choice to disclose, but not a good choice. A person is ready to be discharged, but then that person does not have a home to go. How would they manage the care afterwards? So what do we do here? Again, choice, but no good choice. And then there could be cultural competence and so on and so forth. So often when thinking about dilemmas, we're thinking about there are choices, but no good choices. Often when we're thinking about ethics, it is not just one AI system making a decision. We're thinking about multiple people involved. So when I start thinking about ethics, I'm thinking about ethics as a multi-party concern and not a single entity concern. And the important thing here is when people talk about ethics, they start thinking about trolley problems, wherein these happen only in hypothetical scenarios. But even in our day-to-day scenarios, we're faced with several dilemmas. So how do we resolve those dilemmas? And that is where I start thinking about how do we operationalize ethics. If I go further, I think people often talk about how AI systems have to be designed, and then we start thinking about AI principles. Broadly, fairness, accountability, transparency, explainability, and privacy, safety, and so on and so forth. So we have been calling these as AI principles, and we are thinking about these as the end things that we would want to achieve. And then we start thinking about ethical principles. The idea here is that these are operationalizable rules from philosophical theory. Probably Emmanuel and Jonathan, these would be the right people to help us here, which could imply logical propositions denoting what is morally acceptable. Now, when we start thinking about morally acceptable, what does that even mean? And there's a lot of various ways to think about moral principles. I'm not going to go into details about this, but broadly, we're starting to think about normative ethical principles here. The idea here is there could be virtue ethics. We're thinking about good behavior. What a good person would do in a certain situation. That is virtue ethics. You could start thinking about behavior from consequentialism as well. Like, if you do this, this may happen. If the consequence is good, you do that behavior. And then it could be deontology. You do that behavior irrespective of what the consequence would be, or irrespective of what a good person would do. You're doing that because it is a morally accepted behavior. Now, when we start thinking about operationalizing ethics, what is the correct principle to choose? There are several principles. What would be the correct principle to choose? If you apply one principle, it could misalign with other principle. You want to start thinking about the context. What would be the correct context to use? You also want to think about consistency, scalability, power, who is making the decision. And then when we start to think about this, it is not just a moral challenge, it is or not a clinical challenge, but it is a system design challenge, and this is where I would want to stop. So we need more interdisciplinary solutions. Thank you.
Thank you to Nirav, and I'll now hand over to Rizana. Just okay to move forward.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about AI on an impact of AI on sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, we talk normally about environment. And actually, it's a lot more than that, right? So when we talk about sustainability as I define it, what we want to consider is how to keep something in a particular state that we want it to be continue to exist for a long time. So sustainability then is not just about environment. It's also about social, individual, personal, technological, and economic concerns, not only environment. And so these are the examples of issues that sustainability is concerned about. It's about sense of community and trust, as some colleagues have already been talking. It's about health and lifelong learning, some other colleagues have already been talking about. It's also about how we continue living in this environment of ours, in this way that we create money to sustain ourselves and our families and our communities. And then we develop the technology that drive us forward. But all of this exists within the constraints of the environment from which we use resources and to which we also expunge our left out undesirable effects. So we talk about, why am I talking about sustainability while you're talking about the ethics? Why are you talking about ethics? Because you want to live in a sustainable environment, in a sustainable community. So all that you are talking about here is essentially how do we make this environment that we live in a bit more sustainable, this community, these people living a bit more sustainable life, right? So every time you talk about ethics, you are essentially talking about sustainability. And so at the same time, we're talking about AI, which is a technology. And what we do as technology developers, I am from computer science, we develop this technology in order to do something. And as a result of it, it has positive and negative impacts as well. On positive side, we help to produce and optimize and use the resources in such a way that the tasks that we are wanting to do are done better. Like we substitute travel with video conferencing. We optimize use of resources in such a way that we don't waste anything. And then we are trying to make all this in a way that helps us to make more money, improve the environment we live in, make people happier. Social, individual, technological, environmental impacts are, intended result of why we develop technology. At the same time, when we develop technology like AI, we end up inducing additional things, like we end up requiring more energy to run these models, to train this model. We create enormous amount of hardware, which is by the time that is actually installed is obsolete, and you have to develop new one and throw the old one away. We optimize things like with AI learning how to optimize our traffic, we improve the traffic movements. What happens as a result of it? We drive even more. Why? Because now it's faster to go from A to B in a car because there are no congestions that were like stopping us from using the car before. And we create a lot of emerging risks. We don't know what kind of other things these nanorobots are going to do to us, right? So when I'm bringing the attention of this group of people to the impact of sustainability that AI can have, I would like us to be considering the environmental, social, individual, technical, and economic dimensions, and not only think about the ethical dimensions as something that relates to people and societies. It's more than that. The example in here is not from AI. I just didn't have time to update this. But this is an example from Airbnb. We developed the technology, which is great, right? And as a result, it has a long-time effect of gentrification, rather than just helping people to live in a good kind of tourist environment. So what I want to say is AI has an enormous impact on sustainability. It can be positive or it can be negative. And the key question is, which impact do we design this technology for? And then really what we would like to see is some feedback and some support and some input from ethics and others as well to improve this. And I also want to bring to attention some of the related initiatives maybe. So for example, we have a newly starting AI-driven digital transformation network, which is focusing on energy use and impact. And then we are looking at other things around this as well. So yeah, that's where I will stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Rosanna, and now we have Connor. There you go. OK or arrow
How do I move forward?
Yeah, OK or arrow button.
Oh, sorry, you just did that. Hi, I'm Conor Hutton, and compared to everybody else, my involvement with ethics and AI is quite sort of boring and practical. I'm involved in a number of ethics panels, the universities, ethics committee, the Turing Institute, the BBSRC AI and Bio network, etc. And so I'm kind of involved in a day-to-day way in trying to decide whether projects are ethical or not, often projects involving AI. Also, in my work, I'm interested in working out how it is that AI machines do what they do. Here's a diagram of the sort of thing where we try and take apart the insides of a transformer in a mathematical way and understand exactly what's happening. So my involvement is largely practical, but I'm not a practical person. And I think what I've started to think in thinking about these things is that we are underestimating or not being distracted from the sheer enormity of what's happening with AI. And I think that should affect the ethical framework that we bring to bear on these problems. When I was a boy, I would often wonder what it would be like if we met an alien. And I think in some ways, that's what's happened. We need to think about AI as a discovery rather than just a technology. Instead of that, we're being distracted by things, like hallucinations. I saw a fantastic discovered one yesterday. I was walking, and there's an art auction house near where I live, and they had this fantastic object in the window. It's got a bottle with a piece of fabric, and printed on it is a naked man, and there's a letter with a surrealist poem, and it's signed HW. So I wondered, who is this HW? I photographed it, sent it to the chatbot, and of course it told me. It said it was Herbert Wilde, a little-known British artist and erotic ephemerist. What a wonderful thing to be. It told me about his life. He was, it was a pseudonym. He was in clubs. He made homoerotic objects for his friends. He took the name Wilde for Oscar Wilde. It seemed amazing. I look forward to going into the art auction house and showing off to the auctioneer that I knew all of this about Herbert Wilde, except for then, when I looked further, it turned out, of course, the machine had made the whole damn thing up. There's no such person as Herbert Wilde. Who knows who made that object? It's amazing, though. And I think, so that's a danger. The machines do make things up. But I sent it a photograph. This isn't the hallucinations we used to suffer, where we typed things in and it made up scientific references. This is a multimodal model. It's reasoning about the picture. It couldn't do that 3 months ago. We have to appreciate just how fast this technology is changing and the fact that we don't really understand what it's doing. So, my message is, it's amazing what we've discovered. It goes beyond what we have put in. We have discovered principles of computation and intelligence that we don't fully understand. But I think from an ethical point of view, we have to realize that means that we cannot expect to be able to understand what the machines are doing in using them for practical benefit. This is a picture of somebody manufacturing penicillin in the early 1940s. Now, of course, after penicillin was discovered, we had no real idea of the mechanisms that, of operation of penicillin. It was the 50s and 60s before that was fully understood from a biochemical point of view, and we're still trying to understand the sort of dynamics of antimicrobial resistance, etc. But to have waited, to have said, you know, this is a black box, penicillin is a black box, we shouldn't use it until we fully understood it, would have been completely unethical, because in the meantime, it saved tens, hundreds of thousands of lives. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Connor. We're now moving on to the lightning talk section. So this is speed dating time. So come here, do your spiel as quick as you can. I'll be controlling the slides from now on because there's only one for each. So first of all, can we have Anya?
Hi. I'm first lightning talk. My name is Anya Skatova. I'm a lead digital footprints lab at Population Health Sciences Medical School, and we do research with digital footprints data, which is mostly shopping data, but also interested in banking and other wearables data and so on. So this is just a slide to showcase the main part of our current work. Which is shopping data is something that you see on your receipt. It basically in the same way as you see it. And it has a huge potential for health research, from understanding things like diet to symptoms of people don't report to the doctor. So we link this data into longitudinal population studies to understand various issues about sampling biases, but also validating patterns in the data and so on, and then hence use it for health research. There's loads of ethical issues around this work, and I think I'm going to run out of time now, but you can find me. We do loads of ethical governance and infrastructure work with this data, and made a lot of progress. So do I have 1 minute? Yeah, I think I run out. I have a timer here. But yeah, thank you very much. Please find me. There is loads of issues that we can explore together.
And now Emma Cahill.
Okay, thank you. Onto the trapdoor. Okay, my name is Emma Cahill. I am a neuroscientist with a bit of a background in experimental psychology. So I'm interested in the rise of the use of mobile chatbots for mental health. So there are hundreds of these applications that support mental well-being because they haven't been through randomized controlled trials to see if they actually do benefit people's mental health. So I've come at this through collaboration with some local Bristol companies. Empress VR is more of a virtual reality tool. It's not so much AI at the moment, but Spicy Minds is a chatbot which uses LLMs to give young people mental health support. And what I'd like to know is if we can actually test these systems, understand, do they properly help people? What do we compare them to? And think around the ethics of the rise in these. And for that reason, I'm interested in the risks of over-reliance on these tools, unexplored deficits in the tech when it can go wrong, how it can go wrong, and the issues of accessibility, like we heard about earlier, about who gets these tools and how often will they be able to use them, and what happens if they suddenly disappear. Okay, so lived experience, sustainability, ethics, interested. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emma. And now we have Elaine.
Okay, so I wrote these slides a long time ago, so I don't remember what's on it, so I'm going to do a little bit of reading. I am a postdoc with the TORS project. I'm from computer science, background in design. But we've been basically looking at, so I'm supposed to represent sort of the human side, the patient side of sort of building the TORS system, and thinking about when we build an AI for working with real world data, we actually need to use real people and their real data. So we did sort of a photo elicitation study to kind of see, like, how do people live in their homes, how do they care in their homes, how does that potentially impact the building of an AI system and the gathering of data. And really it was thinking about how would this then be used in real clinical trials, like gathering home data, and how will home data, which is not as clean and neat as, sort of data sets, be sort of changing how we design the models that we use. Essentially, for the second study that I'm looking at, we're thinking about how data actually moves through an AI system, and so any sort of input on that would be helpful. yeah, and my time's up.
Thank you, Elaine. And now we have Amberly.
Hi, great. So I'm Amberly. I'm based in digital health in the Faculty of Engineering. And I'm talking about a technology which is seizure forecasting technology for people with epilepsy. And this is being developed by our multidisciplinary team. The technology involves collecting real-time data through a smartwatch device and companion app. This is data on seizures and triggers to seizure, using machine learning models for predictive forecasting the likelihood of seizure in the next 24 hours, and then an app interface which provides a model output as well as self-management features accompanying the forecast. And the main message I wanted to take is from this talk is that we are designing this for the individual with epilepsy, but we're also thinking about how we can involve family and carers in this technology, how we can integrate the technology within the NHS, and also the wider regulatory landscape and societal impact of the technology. So all these elements have an impact on how we've designed the technology, but also all these levels have quite interesting impacts for how we think about ethics and governance. So we've got HCI researchers, people from health sciences, and we're looking for collaborations with ethics and people interested in regulation. Sorry,
Thank you, Amberly. Now we have Lena.
I've actually basically got one project on AI, which is a bit of a family production because that's together with my brother, who's a medic and now a hospital manager, and we looked at how we can preserve trust in AI, assuming that you cannot trust medical AI, but you should definitely preserve the trust between the medical professional and the patient. And we came up with something like 8 or 9, I think, recommendations for how that could be done. The paper's just been published in Nature Digital Medicine, and we are now going to expand on that, in particular with respect to medical decision-making and the way it can be implemented in clinical practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. And now we have Debbie.
Thank you. Okay. Hiya. Well, I am actually a social scientist. So I'm from the School of Policy Studies, and I'm talking from the Centre for Socio-Digital Futures, which is an ESRC 5-year investment, which is bringing together social scientists with engineers and people from arts and humanities to think about how the digital and futures kind of interact. So in particular, the project I'm running is looking at predictive analytic systems in use through lots and lots of local authorities to assess risk for young people in social care. The system I've been investigating for the last 2 years is a system called Think Family in Bristol. It was developed by Avon and Somerset Police. It's been run by Bristol City Council. It's essentially a massive data linkage system, but it has risk modelling associated with it. And in particular, we're interested in the impacts of potential bias or implicit bias, as we see it, in these systems because of the kinds of data that's being brought together and the way that the system is learning. It's a system that's attracted a lot of attention. I am hoping to access the source data, the algorithms and the training data sets, working with our engineering colleagues to do a proper assessment of this system. Thank you.
Thank you to Debbie, and now we have Roberta.
Yes, my name is Roberta Bernardi. My main area of expertise is I study digital innovation in healthcare organizations. I'm from the business school, and my presentation today is about this concept on AI and organizational justice, and I take a focus that moves away from bias in algorithmic models, but actually situates AI and justice in the social technical fabrics of health systems, and it takes inspiration from the Horizon project, a scandal at the post office where a simple IT error escalated due to poor leadership and organizational culture. So with AI, complexity arises because it learns from
changing the environment in which it is embedded, and therefore it becomes harder to identify the root causes of injustices when basically technical complexity, organizational cultures and procedures are intertwined. A challenge that I would like to address in a future project. Thank you.
Thank you to Roberta. Next we have Kirsten.
Hi everyone, my name is Kerstin Notnagel. I'm a second year PhD student in the Population Health Science at the University of Bristol. This is an AI-guided handheld ultrasound probe. Pretty cool, isn't it? A clinician in a remote village could perform ultrasound diagnostic with this without a lab, without delay. AI like this is changing healthcare, helping us to diagnose faster, more efficient, and unburden stretched healthcare systems. But there's a challenge. If we don't build AI that works everywhere, we risk deepening the gap to regions lacking infrastructure, like in parts of the Global South. To ensure equitable healthcare, we must advocate for policies that support AI technologies tailored for diverse settings. This includes government incentives for creating adaptable tools, infrastructure investments to support the implementation. Innovation is great, but inclusion is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Our next speaker, Telmo, unfortunately can't make it, but he has recorded a voiceover on his slide. So fingers crossed this will work and it's going to play.
For health tends to follow a certain pipeline. We train a bunch of models on a training data set. We verify their performances according to certain metrics. Whichever has the best performance, we then maybe try to understand its predictions using explainability methods to know what features it's using to make its predictions, and then we deploy it. The problem is very often models don't generalize really well for different hospitals, different populations. And I think the reason for this is that we don't really know what the models are learning or whether they are actually finding shortcuts in the data. So I think we need to teach models the same way that we teach students. We need to define intended learning outcomes so that we can control what models are learning. This can generate accountability. This is good for documentation, but also it's good for controlling what models are doing so that we know which models work well for which populations. Thank you.
So thank you to Telmo in his absence. And Aisling.
My name's Aisling. I'm from computer science, and I am in human-computer interaction, and I think our ways of knowing are very useful in this space. We know that the moves in healthcare are taking it out of the clinic and into the home for cost reasons, for population reasons. There's many complexities we've heard about today. And there's but a lot of opportunity. There's huge potential for AI in supporting care outside of clinical settings, reducing the use of the health and social care system, such as Elaine's work, who's in the front row here. We know that people are weird. People are very weird. They have too much trust in AI. They have too little trust in AI. They don't use it at all. They overuse it. They go through a life transition. Their entire personal data set is now useless because they've moved to university. AI innovation can't be viewed in a vacuum. It's only part of a complex care ecosystem that involves other technologies, old technologies themselves, other people, and their contexts. Again, very strange. I think that getting lay people to the design table is key. And that's not just at the very beginning or the very end, but in the development of AI. And there's some value in iterative design and looking at real-world evaluation for unintended consequences and changing contexts. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisling. David is here. And over to David. I spotted your badge, Mr.
Thank you. Yes, hi, I'm David Weston from up at UWE. I'm an engineer. I think I'm preaching to the converted here if I say that to achieve our public health aims for digitization and AI, we need widespread public trust. The technical capacity for delivering these services tends to sit in the private sector. Profit-led companies can achieve high levels of trustworthiness, but arguably for AI and to achieve our public health aims, we need near universal public trust, as close as we can get, otherwise people will disengage from these services. And so I believe that in certain settings, like perhaps this one, that an organization with a legally binding system of incentives, a community purpose built into its legal structure, can potentially outperform profit-led companies. So if you want to control how something is done, you should try and control why it is done. There are examples of this in care homes and in examples like Sirona delivering outpatient services in our NHS. But as far as I'm aware, this model isn't being adopted for machine learning in health services. So that's something I'm planning to try. Give healthcare AI a kick in the back end. Please come and talk to me if you're interested in discussing the promise or why that's a bad idea. Let me know.
Thank you, David. And now we're on to two talks, which are support for researchers in the area of AI and health.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Richard Gillam from the Bristol Centre for Supercomputing, which is part of the university. So I'm here to tell you very, very briefly about the Isambard AI supercomputer. Simply, the Isambard AI supercomputer is an unprecedented amount of computational power for the UK and for the University of Bristol. It exists already. Isambard AI is being delivered in two phases. Phase 1 is up and running, being used for research right now, covering all sorts of different things, such as LLM fine-tuning, for example, for UK-specific languages, drug discovery, medical imaging, and lots of different aspects like that. Phase 2 is coming along in summer. I saw it in person last week, and that will be powered on in the next month or so. And we are thinking very, very carefully, making it accessible to as many different researchers as possible. There are two access routes I want to highlight to you. There's the main access route through DCIT, the government, and there's also University of Bristol allocation, which is actually an incredibly powerful resource in the top 100 of supercomputers worldwide when it comes on. We tailor our user experience to help with people that have traditional computational computer science skills, but also for people that are coming from different areas as well. We respect how you use your software. We don't want to get in your way. We want you to be able to use it. And there's lots of layers we're thinking about. Data security, for example. We're speaking to people how to use UK biobank data and so on and so forth. So really trying to make it accessible. Please come and give me a look if you want to know more. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And the final talk is James Thomas.
Which one is it? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Thomas, Senior Data Scientist at the Jean Golding Institute for Data Science and AI at the university, and very pleased to be here. We're one of the sister university research institutes alongside the EBI. I'm going to talk about 4 ways that the JGI can help you with your research. The first 2 are how we can support good practice in research that involves data science and AI. The first of these being we provide data science support to researchers at the university. We either provide a free help desk where you can get free kind of short-term support. It's just an email address away, which is at the bottom right of the slide there. We also provide costed research support, which is effectively like a pool of part-time data scientists, where if you have something that involves data science or AI, but it's not enough to give a full-time kind of 2-year postdoc to, you can embed us into your project. And the idea as well is that the person from the JGI that supports you also upskills members of your team to try and embed those good practices. And then thirdly, we also provide a community for all of those people that are doing that anyway at the university as well, to help them learn and get peer support from each other. And then if you actually want to learn more about coding, data science, AI, things like that, some best practice topics like reproducibility, things like that, we also provide training in those as well. Thirdly, we have a whole team that run networking sessions and events. We have our upcoming Bristol Data Week, which is the 2nd to the 6th of June, coming up soon. We have a dedicated team that help us liaise with the Alan Turing Institute, the National Data Science and AI Institute, and they're also setting up a regional network, trying to organise more events. So if you'd like to access the team or access Turing University partners, so there's a load of them all around the country, that's the team to go to. And then one other event I'll just highlight at the bottom, we also have an interest group in health data research, which is having a meeting tomorrow during the day. So if you'd like to attend that, more details on our website as well. And then finally, we also help with funding. So we can help you with funding applications that involve data science or AI components, but also we provide seed corn funding. And this year specifically, we're looking at how we can help projects that involve large language models, NLP, things like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. So now if I can ask Nirav, Rosanna and Nina to come up to do the closing remarks, wrap up, etc.
Thanks, everyone. I think these were very stimulating talks. I really enjoyed them and hope you all also enjoyed all of these. I think thanks to Nina and Pat and the Elizabeth Blackwell team. Also to our keynote speaker, also plenary speakers and everybody else. I think broadly the way I saw it is that human is at the center and we're thinking around a human. So that is one takeaway that I had from Connor's talk. I would see AI as a discovery, and then we are using this discovery in various ways, starting with how do we design AI, what should be the considerations there. We're starting to think about various tools that we have created, how are we using it for various scenarios, mental health, ADHD, seizure, and so on and so forth. And then we're also starting to think about how are we making sure that these tools are trustworthy, considering that people are different, and so on and so forth. Right. So I think so it's really good for me to understand. It was very nice to see what are various things people are doing from various expertise. Make sure you use the time in the networking session, talk to each other. Also look at the support that is provided by the Zumbard AI team, also by JGI, and see how you can help and do collaborate and so on.
Thanks, Nirav. He stole a lot of the things that I was going to say, so I will just not repeat, but just add to the bits that I think also stood out for me. I think one thing that stood out for me is that a lot of us are talking, as Nirav said already, about people, but there were like a few nuggets of these other important things, like, for example, the context of operation and the differences between the context for which we design and in which we then deploy, and then variation of the context and variation of the qualities of the users impacting on whether or not what we have made as a good and ethical, potentially, excellent solution suddenly becomes unusable. And that also relates to the notion of ecosystems that Aisling pointed out. So I think now what I'm picking up as things that I would have liked to see a bit more, and maybe we're not talking enough about, and this is an ecosystem. So yes, we talk about people, we talk about professionals, we talk about technology. What is a bigger ecosystem within which all that exists? Maybe we can talk a bit more about that. And also, what are the conflicts about those things that we are talking about? What are the ethics, right? Why didn't you guys talk about conflicts, ethical conflicts? I was really looking forward to finding out a bit more about this. So maybe we should be thinking about those areas as well a little bit more. Yes, and the key challenge for me is often what is right. So how do we make a decision about what is or isn't right? And especially when there are ethical conflicts between many right things. So other than that, as Nirav said, enjoy, and thank you to everybody who organized this, and such a big thank you to Sarah, who last minute dropped everything.
Thank you very much.